Warning, this episode has some graphic audio, which may be a trigger, so please take care of yourself if you listen.
Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your stories as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us.
I'm so proud to have my friend Ashleigh, who I adore. I met her when she was a stylist for the Queen It's a New Day program, and we've loved each other ever since. She's a social worker now, and
Awesome.
we end up having some mutual clients, sort of. I have them, then she has them, so we have some connections. So she's working in the field, helping people in drug and alcohol, and she has a story to tell. So Ashleigh, we'll just let you go ahead.
Well, thank you for having me. I really feel honored to join you and share my story. I always hope that anything I share helps somebody else. So my mom was a young mom. She was a teen mom. She intentionally, so she tells me, got pregnant on purpose because she wanted somebody to love her. And that was me. So I was the lucky winner of that. And we had a few years, maybe a year or two by herself. Then she met a guy who was fresh out of prison and thought he was great material to marry. And she married him. And so he was in the motorcycle gang. So he was a brilliant guy.
How old were you?
I was probably one when they got together, 1 or 2 years old when they got together. My first memories with them together as a couple, I was 3, and that was in the motorcycle gang. He would be in the front, I was in the middle, and my mom on the back on the motorcycle, and we would go all over wherever they were going.
Cool.
You know, at that time, it was like exciting from what I remember just very flashes of things. But then around about 5 years old, things got different. At that time, I noticed that he was always like touching me or rubbing me on my back, whereas before he really didn't touch me a lot. He actually would put form for my mom when she was around that he thought I was great because my mom thought I was great. But then when she wasn't, he would absolutely ignore me. And I recognized that early. That was the set role, was that when she was around, I love your daughter, she's amazing. And when she wasn't, go away, get away from me. So my mom would go away periodically, go see my grandmother and stuff, and she would leave me at the house with him. And that's when he kind of would, like I said, he would like rub my back or just, stroke my head or something like that. But never anything that you would say was overt at that time. But then as I was getting ready to be sick, right before my brother was born, my mom was pregnant, and she was very pregnant. So she didn't want to have sex with him at all. She did not want to be bothered. She wanted to be left alone. I remember because there was times she was on the sofa and he was in the bedroom. And every time my mom was on the sofa, he would come into my room. And I remember very distinctly, all the lights were out in the house, but there was always a night light in the hallway. I could see his shadow as his shadow would cascade forward. As he would walk down, I would see his shadow come down the hallway. And that's how I knew he was always coming down the hallway. And then he would come into my room, and he never started with just sexually assaulting me. It was generally like lifting up my covers and looking and lifting my pajamas and looking at me. And the only light was the night light in the hallway. And so he would do that. Then he'd put my shirt down, or my pajamas down, and then he'd go away. As time went on, he got bolder and bolder. And before I knew it, he was touching me. He was putting his hands in my underpants. He was laying on top of me and grinding on me, but he didn't really do anything, mostly just touching at that point. It was a lot of heavy petting and touching, feeling on my privates and things like that. Then one particular night, at this point, my brother has been born. They got in an argument. And let me say this, the man was very abusive to my mother, extremely. Actually, to all of us. He wasn't just verbally abusive, he was physically abusive. And so this particular night, he had pretty much beat my mom to a pulp. And my mom had decided she wasn't going to sleep in the bed with him, but my brother was in the bed with my stepfather. And I knew this before we went to bed. Like, it was already set. I saw him grab my brother, take my brother, put him in his room. My mom was like, "Good night, Ashley, go to bed." I went in my room, closed the door. And then later that night, and at this point, I developed an inability to sleep. So I was having trouble sleeping. He comes down the hall. I'm wide awake, and I would clutch my blankets and try and keep them up with my eyes closed, but I was awake, keep my blankets up to under my chin. And I would always think, if I just pretend I'm asleep, he will go away. But as I got older, I realized it was kind of my way of preparing myself to separate myself from the situation. So when I closed my eyes, Ashley left and the body remained. And whatever he did to that, he did to that. The difference was this particular night, he took me out of my bed and took me into his bed, which had never happened before. When he took me into his bed, I remember my brother was laying under the window. Their bed was up against the window, and my brother was under the window. And I, to this day, adore my brother, love my brother to pieces. And he knew this because I had been an only child for 5 years. And now all of a sudden, this great, gorgeous little boy pops in. And I'm like, I'm not by myself. So I saw my brother, and he set me down in the bed. He said, "Come over here and lay down." And so then I didn't want to lay next to him. So I laid at the foot of my brother. The moon was shining through the window onto my brother, and I focused on that. And then he said, "Look, your mom's having some kind of effing problem, and I don't feel like dealing with her shit. So you're going to do what she wants." And I just kind of didn't know what that meant. I just still laid there looking at the moon. I have no idea what you're talking about, and I just laid there. And he said, "Did you hear what I said?" And I'm like, I couldn't speak. No words would come out. I remember trying to open my mouth, but nothing would come out. He's like, "Come here." And he grabbed me like by my shoulder, drug me, and I'm laying down. So it's just one side, like this is my right side, grabbed me this way. He could only get my pajamas and pull me towards him. And when I was forced to look, he had no pants on. He was ready for sex. I just didn't know what to do. So I just knelt there looking at him and then looking down at his privates and looking at him. And he was like, "What are you waiting on?" And I don't know what he's wanting me to do. And so then he like flicks me on my cheek. He's like, "You're going to suck it." And I was like, my brain, I'm 6 years old.
Yeah.
So
oh my gosh.
my brain's not able quite to process. So he grabs me from the back of my head and forces me to do it. I literally was gone. From the moment my mouth touched his private, I do not consciously remember the rest of that evening. I literally separated myself from that. That unfortunately started a regular thing of him at that point coming into my room, and now he wants me to do the same thing. He wants oral sex or he wants to touch me much heavier, to a point that I would get sore sometimes. He would touch me so hard. He never sexually actually penetrated me fully, but he didn't have a problem putting his penis right there. It didn't bother him whatsoever. So then in the daytime, he would have me sit on his lap, and I could feel that he was wrecked, and then he would make me sit there. My mom would make me go places with him, and he'd be touching me while we were going places because he was a truck driver. It was like a repetitive, ongoing thing. And so I had never said anything to anybody. I kept my mouth shut because he told me he would kill my brother and kill my mother.
Of course.
That's the regular speech they give a little kid 5 or 6 years old.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Why wouldn't you believe them?
I totally believed him because he actually taught my mom how to shoot a rifle, and I was in the backyard. It was funny. I was telling a friend this the other day. I was in the backyard and we had a swimming pool, and I was diving off the diving board, and he pulled the trigger, and the bullet went right underneath me as I dove into the pool. The window shattered, and the bullet went right underneath, and I felt the heat of the bullet go underneath my body as I dove into the pool. My mom standing there, and she said, "You told me it wasn't loaded." And then that started another of him beating the mess out of her, But he always made sure I knew. He didn't just spank us. He would bring home 2x4s where there used to be a bolt in them. And I weighed nothing. I literally was probably the skinniest kid. Like, they had to buy baby doll clothes to dress me when I was a baby because I was so tiny. That's how tiny I was. And I was that tiny forever. And he would beat me so badly with this big 2x4. The hole where the bolt used to be, my skin would get sucked in there and leave a mark on my behind or my back. He was just an awfully cruel, mean person. He would just make sure that I knew I better not tell anybody ever. He had a son we were 6 months apart. He had another son, and his son came to live with us. It was nice to have another kid, and I got excited when he came because I thought, good, this will stop because there's a big kid in the house, like, another big kid. Mm-hmm. And his room is right next to mine, so this will stop. Didn't stop him one bit. Not at all. Matter of fact, I think it got worse. I think that at this point I was looking for help. I went to school. I would, want to tell people, but I couldn't. I would be in class, and I was going to a Catholic school. The nun that was my teacher hated me. And I was failing. I was in the 3rd grade. And I was failing 3rd grade. And she used to call me stupid in front of the class. She used to beat me in front of the class. She used to talk about, don't be like Ashleigh, bad example of a good student. She said, I'm going to go meet with your parents because we can't understand why you're so stupid. Oh, yeah. And we sat at the table at dinner. And I will never forget this as long as I live. Sister Beulah sat at the table with my stepfather and my mother and my baby brother, and commenced to talk about how stupid I was while I sat at that table. And why wasn't I smart enough to pass math? And why couldn't I get it? And why wasn't I like the other kids? That was the entire dinner that they sat there and browbeat me. Wow. I couldn't defend myself. I couldn't say anything. I was a kid, and so I couldn't tell Sister Beulah what was going on because she hated me.
She probably wouldn't have believed you.
She probably wouldn't. She definitely would not. She called me liar. She called me a lot of stuff. So the only person I had was my stepbrother. He was in the garage one day playing drums. And I said, if I walked up to him and I said, if I tell you something, can you promise you won't tell anybody? And he was like, what? And I was like, no, you have to promise because people will die if you tell somebody. And that made him stop drumming. And my stepfather wasn't home at this time. And he said, what? And I told him, I said, well, when Dad comes down the hallway to make sure we're all asleep? And he goes, yeah. And then I said, well, he always stays in my room longer. And he's like, well, why? And then I started telling him what had been going on. I told him everything.
Wow, that was brave.
How old were you?
7.
7.
About 7.
How old was your brother, your stepbrother?
6 months older.
He's 6 months older, so he had just turned 8. And so I told him, and he said, you're a liar. Oh. And I said, no, I'm not lying. He said, really? And I said, no, I'm not lying. I said, but you can't tell anybody. I said, I just don't know what to do. I said, what do I do? And he was like, I don't know. And so I think I just stood there frozen because there was the one person I felt I could tell, and maybe he would help me. And so then I turned around and I went in my room and I shut the door and I sat on the floor. I actually climbed in the closet because that was my safe place. Climbed in the closet, sat on the floor with my Barbies, and I cried. And then about 45 minutes later, I hear my name being called. And it's not being called, it's being yelled. And so then all I hear is, he said she told him that. He said she told him that. And I was like, oh my God. And so my mom is screaming. I said, get your ass out here. Get your ass out here. And I climbed out of the closet and I could feel like I had to pee. Like I was so scared. And I went out. There was a sliding door, a pocket door that led to the kitchen. And so I pushed back the pocket door and I walked out into the hallway and could see my mom standing at the kitchen window. And I could see my stepbrother standing next to my mother. And I could see on the lawn, boys' bikes on my lawn through the door. I looked and I'm like, I said, yes. And she said, I just got a bunch of boys coming to my window telling me something. Oh. And your brother says it was true. No. Oh. And that you told him. And I said, huh? She says, your brother says you said that dad made you suck his dick. And he told all the boys, and the boys are telling everybody on the street. And I just stood there. Oh. And I just looked, and I was like, I didn't know what to say. And he said, she told me that. And my mom slapped him. And I looked at her, and she said, Ashleigh, you better freaking tell me the truth right now. And I said, yeah, I told him that. She said, is it true? And I said, yeah, it's true. And she said, how long? And I said, a long time. And she sent my brother off, and she sent me to my room. And she said, don't come out. And all I heard was screaming and things breaking, and my mom yelling at those boys to get their bikes off her lawn and go away. And it was a lie, and don't come back. And I didn't look out the window. I just sat in my closet, and I just cried. And then the next thing I know, several hours later, my stepfather comes home, and my mom makes me confront him and tells him what she found out. And then she says, did you not tell me that is true? And I looked at him, and he has this look like, I'm going to kill you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I just looked, and I was like, I couldn't say anything. And then I peed. I was so scared I peed. And so then my mom said, I don't care if you pee. You're going to tell me is it true? And I said, yes. And he said, she's a liar. Everybody knows Ashleigh lies. She's just a liar. And so then she said, kids don't lie about things like this. And he said, we're talking about Ashleigh. The kid that has imaginary friends, she's a liar. And I just stood there. And my mom said, go to the bathroom, go take a bath, wash up, and change your clothes. We're leaving. And she grabbed our stuff, and we left. I went and stayed with my grandparents. She went back, but she dropped me off at my grandparents' house. Mm. It was the good and the bad. My mom was my everything, but my grandmother was my sanctuary. I stayed with them for a year. I had to repeat the 3rd grade. And so I wouldn't be embarrassed. They sent me, so what my mom says, they sent me to live with my grandmother so I wouldn't be embarrassed that all my friends were going to go to the 4th grade. And I was going to have to stay in the 3rd grade. I repeated the 3rd grade, and then next thing I know, we're going to counseling. But we aren't going. There's been no report filed, nothing like that. Me and my stepfather have to go to counseling together.
Together? With
together.
Your stepfather?
Yes. Oh. And not only that, he would make me hold his hand as we walked into the counseling office. He never told them, they never told them we were there because he sexually was assaulting me and molesting me. No, we were having difficulty. So I sat in there and said basically nothing because he told me to say nothing.
Yeah.
Well, and you're terrified of him.
I was scared to death. I was scared to death. He's a big guy, huge, buff guy, The counseling lasted about 4 sessions of me saying nothing, and they stopped the counseling because I wouldn't talk.
You would think that would be a clue.
Yeah.
You would think. You would think. They never took me by myself, nothing. It was always him sitting right next to me. And, and he would make sure, squeeze my hand till he almost broke my hand before we walked in every time, which was like my indicator to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
So not long after that, my best friend actually lived up, our houses butted up together. So I would spend a lot of time because they were a normal family. I was always over there.
So you had to go back and live with your mom and your stepdad after
I was forced to go back. After the counseling ended, I was forced to go back. My mom never told my grandmother, and my mom threatened me to never tell my grandmother because she said if I ever told her, it would kill her.
Oh, yeah.
So I loved my grandmother and my grandparents to pieces, so there was no way I was going to kill my grandmother. Are you kidding? I'm not. So I never told her, but I did say to her one time, I said, Grandma, if I ever wanted to tell you something about my mom, could I ever tell you? And you keep it a secret and it'd be okay. And she said, if you're going to tell me something that's going to make me hate my daughter, please don't tell me. So I didn't tell her. So I never told her. But she knew something was wrong. She always extra loved on me. She always spent extra time. And she was ill. She had lupus quite severely. She loved on me. She shared with me. I would like to say she almost created the person I am. Was because of just that 1 year we spent together. Every waking moment was about me. And I never had that, you know. So by the time I go back to my parents, next thing I know, the rumor stayed in the neighborhood because it was a tight neighborhood. And people would walk up to me periodically and ask me if I was the girl. Are you the girl? Are you the girl? You know, are you her dad? You know, and I think he got tired of that. So what he did was my mom kept coming and going because it would start up and die down. So people would start talking again. New people would move in the neighborhood and their kids would hear about it and it would go up and go down. So we would leave and come back. And finally, one time my mom said she wasn't ever coming back. He was at his own roofing company. And to this day, I know it to be true and I believe everything within me. He intentionally threw himself off a roof. And he went to the hospital that was right behind our house. We lived behind Dominguez Hill Hospital in California. He got put in the hospital and pretended that he had amnesia. So now he can't molest me. He doesn't even remember it happened. And my mom's telling me, we're going to extra love on your dad. So we moved back home. She says, we're going to extra love on your dad because you know what? He doesn't remember anything. So actually, it's over now. He doesn't remember. So it will never happen again. So I have to teach him how to eat and learn his ABCs. And I know when I walked into that room, I only went to visit him one time. When I walked into that room, he locked eyes on me and he looked at me and he smiled. And I knew then, I knew exactly what he was doing. And so I never went. Like the moment he smiled, I walked out. I didn't say nothing to him. I didn't speak to him. I knew what it was. By this time, I'm about 9 going on 10, and I figured it out. Because during this time, he's still touching me. He's still touching me the whole time. He's still grabbing me. He's still making me sit on his lap. I'm not having to give blowjobs as often, but he's still touching me. And my mom's not catching him. So I knew instantly that he did this on purpose. You know, so after we come home, my mom says that she doesn't feel it's a good environment for him or any of us, and we need to move. And they pack us up and move us an hour and a half away, and everybody gets to ride in the truck but me. I had to ride on the outside of the truck. And my mom's like, why can't Ashleigh get in the truck? He said, she don't need to. She need to watch what she's making us leave. And I cried all the way. And I remember people on the freeway trying to make me smile. And I remember them telling me on the freeway, don't cry. And I just cried and cried for over an hour and a half all the way there until we got out to the valley. Once we got out to the valley and we moved in, the abuse was different. It became just strictly touching or very verbal. The verbal spew that he would give me was horrific. But the beatings of my mom got worse, to the fact he kicked her in the face with his boots on and drugged her down the stairs, choked her in front of me. I had to jump on his back and try and get him to stop. I would have to sleep with a knife. I would have to pull my brothers and sisters in my room and make everybody go under the bed so we'd be safe, you know, and then I would go out and try and protect my mom. And his abuse became worse. He started telling people in the neighborhood we lived, my mom was a whore. She was a prostitute. She was sleeping with the mailman. The police would come. The neighbors would call the police. And he would be like, you know, man, you heard about her. She was sleeping with the mailman. He's like, oh, that's the one? He'd be like, yeah. He's like, man, do what you need to do. And he'd go back in and beat my mom some more. And so finally, at one point, as the years went on, she eventually did leave him. But when I left the Valley and moved to LA. By this time, I've gotten pregnant I was 18 going on 19. I have a daughter of my own. I see him very rarely because at this point now I have a brother and a sister by this man. I never want anything to hurt my brothers and sisters, so I play the role. Nothing ever happened. We're one big happy family. I don't say anything. I show up for events. I don't let him touch my daughter, but we participate because I don't want anybody to be hurt. The only person that should be hurt is me. Nobody else be hurt. So by the time I turned 21, I noticed that my aunt hired him to put a new roof on our house. Now, I don't live far from my aunt, and my aunt keeps calling me and saying, your dad wants you to come over and look at this roof and see if you really like it. Mind you, I have a biological father that lives in this same city, but my biological father found out at 12 years old what happened. He did nothing. He only found out because I stayed with him for a little while. This is after a really bad beating that had happened with my mom, and I had like lost it. She told me she had left and said she was going to go back to him, and I don't know, I broke. Like my brain just broke. And my dad and my uncle had to carry me out to my father's car and put me in the car and take me to live with him. So I stayed with him for almost a year when I was about 12 or 13, about 13. And so during that time, I'm going to a public school. I tell the counselor what happened because I'm having troubles concentrating. And I tell her what happened. The two counselors listen, call my father. My father says, I don't know what to do. He asked me if it's true. I tell him it's true. My dad walks out. The counselors say they're going to take care of it. Nothing ever happened. So at that point, I knew, don't say nothing to nobody. Nobody's going to help you. Oh, you're on your own, you know. So when she asked me to come back and live with her, I went. I thought my dad was going to be a safe haven. He was not. He was not helpful whatsoever. So I went, and when I, like I said, I got pregnant at 18, had my daughter at 19. By this time, she's left him. They've been separated a few years, probably 3 years at that point, 3 or 4 years. Well, let me go back. Before I got pregnant with my daughter, at 17, my mother and I started having issues. We don't know it has to do with the fact, for me, it has to do with the fact that I don't feel I can trust her. Yeah. She's treating me like I'm a prostitute or a whore. Mind you, to all honesty, I was extremely promiscuous.
Well, I wonder why.
Exactly. Nobody's saying anything to me.
Right.
Nobody pulls me aside and say, Ashleigh, let's see. That's about the 5th guy you've had pick you up every day. Like every day, some guy picks you up. Nobody says anything to me. And I'm dating dangerous men, doing dangerous things. And so I finally, for whatever reason, at 17 was like, I can't keep doing this. Like one of the guys I was dating got shot in the face, and right after I left his house. And so I was like, okay, I need to stop. I'm going to get myself killed. Like, I really need to stop this. And so a guy who is a friend of a girl I was going to cosmetology school with at the time calls my house because he has a crush on me. At that time, I have a boyfriend who winds up being my daughter's father. My mom loses it. She plays the message. Who's this boy? I thought you had a boyfriend. I thought you were getting your life together. You aren't nothing but a whore. She commenced to pick me up, slams me up against the wall, chokes me till I nearly black out, punches me in the face, slams my head on the metal chest, busts my eye, busts my forehead, busts my lip, throws me down on the bed, and starts to choke me to where I'm blacking out. I made a promise to my father. He told me one thing. He said, you have one mother and one father. And let me tell you something, you better not ever put your hands on your mother, ever. And in my mind, that's what's running, is my dad said, don't ever put my hands on my mother. And I already know my mom's had men put their hands on. I can't do that to her. But I'm dying. I feel myself dying. My little sister comes in and she starts screaming, Mommy, stop. Mommy, stop. You're killing her. Mommy, stop. My mom doesn't stop. She's screaming stuff at me. I can't even remember. But I know she was yelling something at me. My sister goes back and calls her father, my stepfather. And then that's what gets my mom off me. She says, Mom, Daddy's on the phone. And so then my mom jumps up and she looks at me, and I'm choking, like I'm trying to catch my breath. I jumped up right after she jumped up, and I ran. I had on pajamas. I ran outside, and I couldn't see because I had blood in one eye and the other eye was busted. So I fell down the steps. All I know what stopped me from going in the street was I hit a mailbox, and I fell on the ground. The next thing I remember is I hear my mom had a big SUV, like a Wagoneer at that time. And I hear it pull up, and I hear her yell at me, you better be fucking gone when I get back. Don't you be here when I get back. And I got up, and I didn't have anywhere to go, and I didn't have anybody to call. So I called that guy that called and left the message, and I asked him, could he take me somewhere? And the only person I had to go to was my stepfather. And he's the one that got me to LA. And so he still felt that left the door open. So that's why when I was in California, he would call and ask me to come check this job out. Hey, come check out this job. Come check out this job, because he rescued me that day.
Mm-hmm.
And so the one job, the last time I put myself anywhere near his presence was when I went to go look at my aunt's roof. He walked up behind me, grabbed me by my shoulders, pulled me back to him so I could feel how hard he was. I am 21 at this time. I could not move. I could not breathe. I was 5 years old again and unable to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Of course you were.
And after that, that was the last time I put myself anywhere near his presence. But he would find me. He would come to my church and be at my church, to where I had to tell the pastors, look, this man assaulted me. They're like, well, why is he coming here? He's just doing this to taunt me. And he would come to my church. He would try and talk to me after church. He'd try and hug me. I mean, it went on for years.
Oh.
And then eventually I stopped going to that church. I stopped telling my brother and sister anything about my life. And then it stopped. He stopped contacting me. So that would probably be, around 24. Because at this point I'm married.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the last time. Was about 24 years old.
Wow. And nobody ever believed you?
No.
Did he ever do anything with your sister?
That was his biological daughter. And the ironic thing is, I had written in my diary what he did to me. And my sister was one of those sisters that got into everything.
Mm-hmm.
And she found it. And she read it. So she knew.
Mm.
And I asked her if he had ever done anything. She was like, no. I mean, he treated her like a princess. Like, I would get beatings because I punished her. So, no, he never touched her.
Wow.
He never touched her.
So how did you ever, were you able to go to counseling, or how did you ever cope or figure this out or deal with it?
When I got married, I started noticing I was having serious issues, sexual issues. If my husband, because in some ways, you marry what you know.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I married a man that had that very domineering personality, very controlling, very manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
In all honesty, he came from a background nearly just like mine.
Mm-hmm.
So he was replaying what he knew, because in general, I could often tell that's not how he wanted to behave. It's how he felt he's supposed to be the man. This is how you behave,
That's what we learned.
Right.
It's what he learned. He never was like, oh, I'm sorry I said that to you. He never did that. That never was it. It was just, he felt that, he was, I would say, I called it the muy macho. You don't have to be Mr. Muy Macho. Like, I don't need that. I need something different. But his behaviors would trigger me, and it would send me into rages where I would break things, cry uncontrollably, not sleep. And that's one of our issues, was that he was always saying, you're not sleeping. You don't sleep. You need to be sleeping, because I was not in a good state. Trying to be able to communicate with people sometimes was very hard for me because I wasn't sleeping,
Yeah.
And at this point, I have 4 children, 4 little kids under 10, and I was on the go all day, every day. I've had a back injury, so I'm not quite 100%. So there was a lot of issues. And what I noticed was they were putting me on medication for pain. And then I'm trying to deal with emotional pain, physical pain, and dealing with children, and a husband who absolutely wants to fix me, always telling me, you just stop doing that. You don't think about it anymore. You don't even think about it. You think about it too much, And even in our trying to have sex, it would always be, you could do it if you wanted to. You thinking about it. You need to just put it out of your head, and that would make it worse.
Yeah.
Was he aware of the abuse that you had gone through? So he knew about it?
He knew about it. He was one of the only men I actually told.
Mm.
And he just wanted you to get over it.
He wanted me to get over it.
Mm.
And that was one of his favorite phrases, actually, was get over it.
Yeah.
Get over it. And so one day, I didn't do good with abandonment and separation. And so that was one of his tactics to make me behave.
Oh.
And so we had an argument, and I just wanted him to either leave to give me a minute to gather myself or talk to me. He kept saying, I'm not leaving. This is my effing house, and I'm not leaving. I said, well, then I need you to talk to me and tell me why you're mad at me. Tell me why you're treating me like this. And he's like, I don't just tell you anything. I'm going to sleep. I'm like, but I need you to talk to me. Please talk to me. And he wouldn't talk to me. He walk past me like I was invisible, just really cruel and mean. I think that day, for whatever reason, I was in severe pain. My back had been bothering me. And then dealing with him, and I think I just got overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and grabbed all the pills I had, and I took every last pill.
Oh.
Ashleigh.
And then as I could feel, my daughter came back there and she said, Mommy, you okay? And I said, no. I said, but please don't come back here anymore. I said, I need you to go take care of your brothers and sisters. You're the big sister. I need you to take care of them, okay? Because Mommy's not well. And she said, okay. And I heard her run to go tell my husband. She said, something's wrong with Mommy. Mommy's not well. And he said, where is she? She said, she's on the back porch. She's fine. Just leave her alone. Don't bother her no more. And so I sat there and I could hear her crying. And I said, I don't want to die. But at that point, I could feel my heart was slowing. It was hard to breathe. And I started dialing every number I knew. I dialed everybody I could call and nobody would pick up their phone. And so I left messages for my dad's ex-girlfriend and my mom's best friend. They called back. By this time, he had took the cord and pulled the phone off the back porch. He didn't come back there. He had just pulled it. And so the phone was gone. I was leaned up against the washing machine and I couldn't sit up anymore. And I slid to the ground. And I was like, I'm so sorry, God. I'm so sorry. I changed my mind. I don't want to die. But it was too late. I could barely breathe. And the next thing I knew, I was in the hospital. No, I was in the car looking up and I saw my dad's ex-girlfriend. I saw her face. And then the next thing I was in the hospital. And they had put the charcoal down and pumping my stomach. My family was like, enough is enough. You need to leave him. But they didn't realize it wasn't just him.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of pain, So then I wound up getting help. That's how I wound up getting the best help I ever had. Wow. I had to go to my church and ask my pastor and tell him what happened. And he was amazing. He was absolutely amazing. He was so compassionate and so caring and so gentle. And my husband was with me. He said, we're going to get you some help. He said, we're going to find you the best help we could find you. And he did. I went there for a year and then I did some antidepressants for a little while. Everything started to change after that.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. It goes to show they're calling it coercive control now rather than domestic violence.
Yeah.
And the control he had over you. And I see so many single moms that, want to be in a relationship and they get in a relationship with someone that's hurting their kids and they can't separate that.
Yeah. My mom definitely couldn't. Even to this day, she's very much in denial. Very much. Still lives there. She doesn't deny what happened, but she doesn't have the ability to connect to the emotions. Yeah. So she's very distant, in that area,
What has your journey been like after telling your story, getting help? I mean, did you have to confront him or forgive him or what? How did you find healing in your life?
I had to do a lot of things. I had to, there was a lot of prayer involved, but there was a lot of learning more about myself and educating myself. I had to do a lot of educating of myself and where I was and what it caused, because I never really took the time or made the effort to try and connect what happened to me and what that ripple effect is.
What its effect was. You're so busy surviving.
Yeah, I never did. It took time. I think as the years went on, more people started to talk, more books were being written. Mm-hmm. I watched a lot of Oprah and Dr. Phil, like a lot of that. Then as I got more information, I was hungry for it, and I started not so much self-diagnosing, but recognizing my behaviors. I would go all the way back to when I was a teenager. And even through those years, I had sex with men I did not even want to, and not recognizing that was part of that from what happened to me.
Right. What you were taught, basically.
Yes, exactly. And, putting myself in bad situations, putting myself in places where it was me getting raped. Why not? You set yourself up for it. I literally would put myself in danger and I didn't understand why. And no one ever said, Ashleigh, this all stems from this. No one took the time to explain it. So I didn't know. And that's when I had to take it into my own hands. And especially once I got the therapy, he made me hungry to recognize why I had done all this. Because his thing was he didn't want me to have any guilt, which is why I adored him. He didn't want me to have guilt about things I had done because of the abuse.
Right.
So he would say, I want you to read this. He'd give me stuff to read, give me books to read, articles to read. And he's like, I want you to read this because when you leave me, there's no guilt. I don't want you to feel guilty. I want you to be educated. Mm-hmm. And so that helped me because he knew I needed to be empowered because I felt helpless, hopeless.
Yeah.
What do you think has changed now as far as where you are in relationship with your family and others that affected your life? What do you think has changed?
I carry no shame.
Mm-hmm.
I have no shame.
Good.
I recognize that, and this is all through therapy and time and being very open, and I have no problem sharing anything with anybody. There's no shame, but I do recognize that I had to take care of that Ashleigh that no one thought was worthy of protecting. And that's where a lot of power came from.
Yeah.
Is I realized they didn't recognize my brilliance at 5. And I was an amazing 5-year-old, but I do. And she's worth protecting. Mm-hmm. She's worth loving on. She's worth caring for. And that took me time to get to that point through therapy and recognizing that a lot of what I was doing, even when I was acting out, was about that one little girl just wanting to be noticed and loved.
Yeah.
Correctly.
Correctly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you deserved it. And
yes, I did.
You know,
it took time to recognize I deserved it.
Yeah. And that little kid, sometimes we don't realize that that wounded child is inside us and is needing someone to protect them.
Yes.
But we're so busy trying to survive, that kid just gets neglected until we...
very much so.
Until we find a way of, not only taking care of ourselves, but taking care of that wounded child, that kid we left behind.
Yeah.
Your story was amazing, especially the fact that you've come so far and now you're a social worker.
Yeah.
You help others.
Help men and women who've lost their children through drug addiction. Oh. And which I realize it all starts with mental health.
Yes.
And a lot of it stems from some of the same experiences I've had.
Yeah.
It doesn't start with the drugs. The drugs is just a symptom. It is not the drugs. It's what happened before the drugs even showed up on the scene.
Yeah, so many of us use drugs just as a way of coping, just as a way of dealing with what we couldn't deal with in our normal life. And, as soon as we find drugs, it's like, oh, this makes everything easier.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I did that for a while. Like, I was a horrible alcoholic for a little while. It was like, I thought it was great. Like, it all goes away, you know?
It does.
Yeah.
So Saturday and Sunday, I was no good to anybody, but my kids would be back on Monday. So we'd have to sober up.
Yeah,
but it was that most definitely. I totally agree.
It works great until it doesn't work anymore. And I lived that way for 20 some years.
Ooh, yeah, you did a lot longer than me and you're still here to live and tell the tale.
Yeah. But I'm
many do.
So proud of where you are now. Yeah. That's amazing, Ashleigh.
And that you can tell your story. Often we have people that it's their first time and they really struggle because they don't know how much to say or what to say. But then what we realize after the interview, they contact us and they're like, oh my gosh, my life is different because I spoke the words. Mm-hmm. Because we started this basically for men because, the whole Boy Scout things, it's hard for men to come forward. It's hard for women too. So we want to reach out to everyone and say, tell your story. But, I think there's just different elements. And what touched me was that you kept going back to your dad, like you had to go to him for help. And people might say, why would you do that? Mm-hmm. I totally get it because you've got this sick connection where you need him. Because he's your dad and you hate him for what he's doing, but he's still your dad. It's so confusing. Yeah, it's so confusing.
Yeah. I think that's one of the dynamics my soon-to-be ex-husband hated was he could never understand why I kept going back over and over. Why when I needed somebody, I went to him, And he just couldn't get it. He was like, it doesn't make any sense. If somebody hurt you so bad, why would you keep going back? It's like, if that's the only person that's going to help you, and that's all you know.
Choice. Sometimes you have no choice. I mean, look at your mother. Is she still with him?
No, they've been divorced a long time now.
But she stuck with him through
15 years. They stayed together.
Yeah.
Wow. And it sounds like she really did believe you, because when you came back, she just basically wanted you to suck it up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, so badly, so much so that she put a lock on my door. So that was supposed to stop him. It's like, when you go to bed at night, just lock your door. So that was my acknowledgement that she believed me. She just didn't have the power.
Yeah, anybody can pick those locks. We picked the bathroom lock in our house. We picked every lock.
Well,
that's what I'm saying. Right? You know, it didn't stop anything, but it made her feel better.
And
it didn't make me feel better, but it made her feel better.
Well, and she was powerless to leave him until she finally did. Probably because, like you, she was in fear of her life or her children's life.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it sounds like he was such a threatening presence, and people don't realize. They just say, "Well, why didn't she just leave?" And they don't get the fear they have, the terror that's in their lives that they have no control over.
Yeah.
And that's why when we do finally, as a child, you finally get to a place where you have some control over your life, you tend to go out of control. Like you did. You just go completely crazy.
Crazy because you never had it before.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And also I relate to a lot of what you went through, because I felt like basically I was doomed from the beginning. My life didn't matter. So it didn't matter what happened to me. So I did a lot of really stupid and bad things because I just felt like it didn't matter, you know, from the beginning. Yeah. And I think people don't realize that until we're given some form of, you know, someone acknowledging that we do matter, that you do matter. Someone actually takes notice and says, I mean, that teacher that called you a liar, and just reinforce that you didn't matter.
Yeah.
Those things just build on you.
Yeah. Couldn't see that your behavior was you acting out, which
never
would have been a clue to her, you know. And one thing that we always say when people are like, well, what do I do if somebody tells me, just say, I believe you. Yeah. I believe you.
And what can I do?
That would have, I probably would have melted.
Yeah.
You know, I probably would have melted for somebody to just say, you know what? I believe everything you're saying.
Yeah.
I believe you. And I'm so sorry that that's happening to you. But what can we do? Life would have went in a different direction, you know.
And then you were sworn to silence, not only by him, but by your mom.
Yeah. Which bred me being a silent person.
Yeah.
And not speaking up for myself. So when men would take advantage of me, I had no voice.
Right.
I was taught whatever came out of my mouth was worthless. So I had no voice. And I think sometimes women don't recognize and make the connection too in a lot of situations that they're in with men, that they don't think about. These things are very much so connected. Why don't you speak up? Why didn't you say stop?
Right.
You know, there's reasons you might. Sometimes you're in danger, but there's often situations where you've been taught your voice is not wanting to be heard and is not valid.
Exactly. Yeah. I remember when I went to college, there was some things going on in my apartment, and someone said, why don't you just tell them? I go, because they won't care. Yeah. Like, what? I'm like, who would care what I think?
And even if it's not true, that's what we believe, because that's what we've been taught.
Yeah.
And that's what we think.
Yeah. Why would I say something when nobody's going to believe me anyway or care?
Nobody's going to listen to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very true.
Well,
very true.
I've watched your walk, Ashleigh, and Ashleigh actually has a YouTube channel that will be launching very soon. And
I was wishing that we were actually doing not just audio, but hear your story and also to see your face through this has been really amazing, because it's pretty overwhelming, but it's also, I love that you've come to a point now where you have hope in your life and you're giving back to people.
And she's always been real. And the thing that really touched me about her, because we worked together, but we didn't really know each other for a while. I mean, in passing.
In passing.
Right. I'd walk into the bathroom where she's helping women get ready for this big event, and they're on the floor praying for these women. I mean, Ashleigh is a prayer warrior. And the fact that you still walk with Jesus after all you've been through, you know that I just think you're amazing, but that you continue to give your life to God. And we we talk, Kevin's wife and Kevin and I often talk afterwards. And so often people say, I want nothing to do with God.
I have a good friend that was abused by a pastor or priest, actually. And it's really hard because he feels betrayed.
Yeah.
Betrayed by God.
Really, really tough to talk to him about. That wasn't Jesus. That was of someone who has fallen.
Yes,
and
a human.
Yet it's still hard for him.
But that shows you how clever Satan is.
He's the greatest manipulator. Yeah. And he knows how to do his best to separate you from God, from the one thing that will help you keep going and looking for hope and knowing that it's out there. He'll do anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he wants the most, is to anyone who's in a relationship with God, he wants to destroy that relationship.
Yes, he does.
Any way he can.
Anyway.
Yeah.
By all means necessary.
Ashleigh, we're going to put your link to your YouTube channel because I'm pretty sure you're going to be launching it this week.
Yes. It should be out in about, I think, less than a week, right, Lori?
That's what I'm thinking. And she, like you said, you see how engaging she is. When she does her YouTube channel, you are like the only person she's talking to. She has this gift, which in radio, I try to teach people, but they don't understand. They're like, you guys, but she is talking to me. And we got to witness a friend of ours in a class we're in did an intro for her. And it was so beautiful. We were all bawling.
We're all crying.
She's got her intro and her outro, and I think she's got like 10 videos by now.
Yes,
I can't wait.
And
yes, I do.
I would encourage to watch them. And Ashleigh, we always end up closing in prayer. So we like to give people an out if that's not their thing, but we'd love it if you want to pray with us.
Sure, I would love to.
So that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this connection. We thank you for this podcast. We thank you for this opportunity to take social media and take it by storm, but take back the lost, Lord. We thank you for everything that they're willing to do to go and reach out for those who the hurt. And you love the hurt, Father. You came here for the hurt and the broken, Lord. And we thank you that these opportunities are being made ready for those of us who have been through storms and have been through trials and have lost, but also have won and come out on the other side. We thank you for giving hope where there is none to the hopeless. And we thank you for giving the opportunity for those to have the opportunity and place to reach out and be able to say, here I am, see me, hear me, and love me. I thank you, Lord, for this day. I thank you for all that you've done, all that you're doing. I thank you for the opportunity that you have blessed us day in and day out, even when we're not aware, for what you protect us from. And I ask that you bless this opportunity for others to be reached, and that it go far and wide, Lord, and touch lives deeply and move others to come to you, Lord. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.